Hi, everybody. Paul here from Flying Colors Painting, and this is another episode of In the Trenches. I think it's episode 23, maybe 24. It is May the 29th today, end of May, and I got the day off today, and thought I'd throw a little video together, maybe throw an episode about, just where I'm at and some of the challenges that I've realized over the years and some of the stuff I've had to put into place. Um, this month has been a whirlwind. We did a really good amount of business this month, and everybody's happy. Bend over backwards on a couple of projects, but for the most part, everything went really smooth this last month. My production side of my business is really dialed in well, and everything from the handoff, it all goes back to what I've put in place in my business. So I'm pretty happy with the operations side of things, and so one of the I've been I've been traveling from Brockville to Ottawa, and it's an hour both ways. So I've been listening to a lot of coaching stuff, and Tom Reber, the contractor fight. He's got some really great. They call it Contractor Fight TV, and they're like 20-minute, 30 minutes, sometimes 40-minute sort of episodes, and they talk about some of the fundamentals of business. And it really started me thinking over the last couple of days. It's kind of why I'm making this podcast episode today. All around our numbers, and where we need to be. And the more I thought about numbers is like, I've screwed up a lot in the past. My best thinking got me into trouble like not too long ago. I've been around for a little while. And, when it comes to numbers and finances, etc., of how do I deal with the money and stuff like that, I try to think to myself, I can probably do a lot of this myself. And that's my issue. Is like, I get this number, I get, I get, I know that what a bookkeeper costs. My last experience with a bookkeeper just didn't go well at all. A bunch of stuff was forgotten. I took over that. I took over the bookkeeping, and I had to switch everything over to QuickBooks. And I've done some past episodes on this as well too. Spent a lot of time shifting it over, and the flow of my business, from about March to October is a busy season, but over the other months it's not so much. November, December, it last year wasn't that bad, but January, February, March, really slow. My phone starts ringing in March for spring, and I will take deposits on contracts coming up. And then it starts to flow in April, like the money starts coming in. But in the meantime, I'm collecting deposits. It funds my project, but our overhead as a small business and as people, it doesn't take a vacation, man. Every month, my rent needs to be paid, my mortgage needs to be paid, my truck payment comes out. The insurance needs to get addressed. The rent on my diamond storage needs to get paid as well too. So looking at the history of the way I've my business runs in the past can reveal a lot about what's wrong with it. And the defects and the shortcomings of what I can do better. I had to do a proposal last year. And it's from poor financial planning, basically not knowing my numbers. So anybody new out there, or if anybody's curious about what it takes to sort of run a business, you have to have all this stuff dialed in. I learned that shifting over HST as I got paid into a separate account is imperative. I collect HST. I buy stuff on the jobs and I pay my subcontractors, uh, and I pay them HST, and I've paid HST on my paint, and anything I buy for a project, I pay HST at the retail. I get to deduct that from the taxes, that I have to pay every quarter. So that gets confusing, and it's like, okay, so it gets confusing. Tracking all that stuff is the answer. I started doing that last year, with through my business plan. I open it up every day, and I look at when I complete a project and I get the remaining project, I need to take out the taxes and send it over there. You know, Here's another thing. I paid myself by dividends last year, so that just means I'm sending over chunks of money, $1,000, $2,000 from my business account to my personal account, and I am taxed on that to a tune of about 30%. So went and did my taxes this April, and it's like, wow, you owe $16,000. You know, when I did my personal income tax, that hurts when it's not planned. I didn't put any money aside from that. It was just, I was like, here's $1,000. I'm gonna cover more, or whatever. I got to cover some bills here. So let's throw $3,000 in there. So looking at these realities, of what do I need to put in place. So some of the stuff that I've put in place, again, I created an e-account through my personal bank to dump all my HST into and all my back taxes now for this year, for last year. So I've got an account there, and I had to consult my master business spreadsheet every day, which tells me which jobs are going on, what my labor is, how much my materials are, and how it's also tracking. They gave me a deposit of this much, so that's leaving a remainder of this much. What's the state of the status of this job? And I use colors, so I got yellow if it isn't done, it's coming up, it's booked. I use blue when it's being done, and I use green when it's done. So I'll track the blue ones, and then it's like at various times people are sending me the money. They're e-transferring me it. It gets automatically deposited in. It can get lost if I don't fucking every morning say, okay, who paid me? These guys are paid. Let's send the HST over right away before I forget it. And that's what I have to do. And then I turn it green. And I turn it green when it's passed over. But tracking the HST, I have another little column that I had to make on the very end of my spreadsheet, that's highlighted in blue and purple and stuff. That yes, the HST's been paid. It's highlighted in purple, that little area. Here's how much I sent over. So e-transferring these amounts once the invoice has been paid from my business accounts to my HST account, then it's there. But it's the full amount of the complete contract. It's not deducting my HST that I paid out. So let's say a subcontractor charges me $2,000 to do this project. What would it be? $260 of that I would have paid him, but it's HST. So it's deducted off the HST that I received from my client, that I paid from the money I received from my client. So there's a residual amount afterwards. And, every quarter that I pay my HST, there should be a nice chunk of money there. It's the gross amount as opposed to the net amount. So there's going to be a difference there, and that is going to be, it's going to give me a little bit of a slush fund, and after the year is gone, then next year it should be easier. There's going to be some money in that account. I'm just not going to touch it. I create this account, I throw the money in, I don't even fucking look at it. I look at it 4 times a year, when I pay my HST, and I'm going to start, I'm going to get what I have to, so that's what I've put in place now. So that's in place. And, I've got some money in that account, and it's a nice feeling having that. But here's what'll happen is in the middle of if I continue on that, when there's no income coming in, my bills don't stop and they need to get paid. which is quite overwhelming and frustrating. And this is why knowing my numbers of what, you know, let me just stick to my script here that I've got. So here's what I have to do. You know, I need to put myself, for starters, on payroll. So I need to either take 35 to 40% of what I'm getting paid and throw it in that HST account so that I'm covering myself towards the end of the year. Or I need to put myself on payroll, pay EI, pay CPP, and pay income tax. And then as a business, I need to match that income tax. So really, that's expensive. It's expensive to do that, and it's a pain in the ass. Every month I need to pay my source deductions. I need to figure it out. I need to submit it. There's a lot of administration work with that. So, because I've done it before, and it's a lot of fucking around and doing it. You know, sticking with my dividends where I'm paid now. I have to be conscious about, okay, I'm setting myself $1,000. I'm setting myself $1,000. I better put 350 of that, $350 on top of that into another account. You know, so then it's like, okay, that's going to build up that account pretty good after a year. So, you know, do I? I'm still trying to figure out what to do with that, and I'm trying to find somebody that can give me some advice on that. I don't know if I should talk to. I've got a financial planner, so he does my investments for me. Is that part of their job? Can they give me advice on, okay, well, I'm getting this money, and here's a chunk of money in an account that's not doing anything for a year. Can I invest that? Like, can I do something with that money? It's just dead money. It's not doing anything for me. It's accumulating a number that increases towards, you know, it would increase up until April of next year when I pay it. But can I invest that? Can I do a short-term 6-month, IRA or something? Can I do something with it? So he would give me advice on that. But, you know, I guess an accountant would be able to give me, or a bookkeeper. I don't know what who I need to speak with on this, you know. Which brings me to what I need, which brings me to you know, I need a budget for myself to figure out what my checks need to be net so I can figure out what my gross amount needs to be. So I need to make a budget, you know, which I haven't done, you know, and I know that I just throw money in my account and it covers it. But to realistically track, I've kind of broken down what I have, you know. My expenses are high. You know, I've got a truck payment, I got one rent payment, I got a mortgage payment, 4 insurance payments, diamond storage. I got a proposal, like I said, I did last year. That's a lot of money every month, you know. And I'm assuming, and I don't even know this, but I'm assuming I'm going to need at least $80K minimum to cover all that. And but I haven't run those numbers, so I don't, you know. I've been in business 15 years. I should have all this stuff in place. But, you know, I'm learning as I go. I'm running by the seat of my pants. I never went to school for this sort of stuff, you know. Which brings me to the next point, which is how much business do I need to create to cover that nut? And what exactly is that? What do I need to cover? What is to pay my bills alone, you know, which is just a break-even point, really. What's my break-even number? And, you know, how many leads do I need to achieve that number? You know, my close rate is about 50%. So I need to double the amount of leads coming in to the jobs that I get. And then what's my average job size, and what's my lead flow now, and what's my closing rate, and what can my crews handle? You know, what's my gross profit off of this? What's my net profit off of this? How can I generate the sufficient amount of leads to carry these numbers. So that goes into marketing, right? And it's like, okay, sales is one thing. I close half of what I get, what it is now. But I need to have more than that, I can only, again, and it boils down to marketing. How am I getting my word out there? What are the things that I need to do to create that number? So it's reverse engineering, really, what I've just explained. Here's how much money I need to make. Here's the amount of sales that I need to make that. Here's the amount of leads I need to generate the sales that makes that number. How am I going to get those leads? Now it's marketing. Now it's like, okay, what works? What doesn't work? Are roadsides working? Do I need to go on Homestars more? Do I need to contact my past clients? Where are my leads coming from? Do I need to spend money on SEO? Is the SEO company pushing that, or is that my best thinking? Like I get calls all the time and emails saying, oh, you need to be at the top of Google and we can really make your presence shown, and which is a bunch of fucking bullshit as far as I'm concerned. Everything I've done to do that SEO stuff has failed in the past. That's all I know. And it's like, yeah, here's some guy that wants fucking, $10,000 of my money to make some promise that he says is going to come true. Bullshit. Yeah, or is it? I don't know. I don't fucking know. I'm not a marketing guy, right? Homestars, Facebook. I spent thousands on Facebook. Never did anything. So I have failed and formed a negative opinion of all of these marketing methods, Negative thinking gives negative results. It's the law of attraction. If I say to myself, this doesn't fucking work, if I try it, it's not. I'll try it, but this never works. And it's failure. It's gonna fail. I was also told putting videos on YouTube and Facebook and websites and not posting enough, I've been told, as well as another thing. And I post all the time now, but I've been told post 3 times a day on Facebook. And the funny thing is that I've tried. I tried a live video at this job I did a couple days ago, and it's in Winchester, so it's out in the country in the boons, and the internet reception is really bad. So I only got about maybe 45 seconds into my little walkthrough of this job that we're doing. I was told, yeah, do updates, just do Facebook Live. So there I have Facebook Live, and I've got it on myself. I turn the camera around to start talking and just going through my job site, and then boom, it's ended, and it posted it right away, and it's like, okay, I got this half-finished fucking thing, and a bunch of my people liked it, but I want to start doing stuff like that. This is playing chess, not checkers. This is like looking 10 moves ahead. That's the whole idea behind reverse engineering stuff. And, I need to market to meet those leads that I need coming in. So, I was also told educating the masses. So educating people, I need to be the expert here. So, I'm going to make a bunch of videos around what does it cost to paint your house? What do you look for in a good contractor? And some questions that come up all the time. Why the hell doesn't my deck hold its paint every single year? Why do I have to redo my deck? How do you paint stucco on the side of a building? That sort of thing. And, how to pick a good contractor. What do you look for when when stuff like this, And it's like, that's the kind of stuff that I need to be putting out. And then, is my sales procedure where it needs to be? I took the Shin Fu course. I paid for it about 3 years ago, but I'm not utilizing all of it. And Shin Fu is getting on the phone. When someone calls you, you call them back, You're booking an appointment, but you're asking them a bunch of questions. Say, well, why are you painting? When are you painting? How, well, that sounds like a really big job. It's, typically in the past, it's going to be between this number and that number. And then you let them know what the budget normally is, what the bracketing pricing is. We could either do a really good job and it'll be this much, or, just a regular job, with no bells or whistles, and for this amount, and I was only really, one of the other things I was taught too was, get them to send a picture of the job so that you can, if they're not going to spend the effort to send a picture of the project that they want to get quoted. Why would I want to waste? First of all, it's an hour for me to get to Ottawa. Then it's gas money. There's no such thing as a free estimate. There really isn't. And that whole free estimate, thing that somehow became normal in my trade, is a bunch of bullshit. I stopped using the word estimate and quote because, and started using the word consultation, because it's like, that's what I'm doing. I'm consulting with you. I'm giving you my advice on what needs to get done, some areas that don't need to get done, giving you some education on what products that we use, why we use them. You're picking my head. What color you're going to go to, what color is on there now, is it going to be easy to coverage? That is experience that I've fucking paid for. I sweat and teared all of this knowledge, and I'm not fucking giving it away. The last thing they say on this Shin Fu is, it's going to cost $150 to do this consultation, and we will give it back. But if everything goes okay, and it isn't, we're not veering too much off of what this original quote the bracketed price, would we have a deal? That's that simple question. And it's like the $150 consultation fee, I'll take it off the actual contract when we sign it. And it's like, where do you think, are you good with that? And it's just asking that question. And I love the concept of that. I need to work on it more. I haven't practiced it, only really practiced the first couple. Like I said, I rely on Paint Scout, which is my estimating software, consultation software, sorry. And they have a great presentation section, which I use all the time. As a picture of their house, it gives a breakdown of what, I've got some videos thrown in there. Hey, thanks for reaching out, and just telling them a little bit about my business. I've got some links to past work, and you know what? It nails me a lot of work. I've been relying on that, to raise me above the rest of the pack, which is easy, Some of the other questions, well, do I need a sales guy? Is that the answer to generate, to be able to handle more leads? But then again, back to marketing. Can I tap the market that I'm in right now to support a sales guy? Because that's the road to growth, is having too much leads that I can do, and then giving some to a sales guy, let him do his close rate, train him to do the same kind of thing that I do. I was also told targeting neighborhoods that I'm in, that I'm working in right now, with door hangers, with signs, with sticky phone pole ads, or with flyers in a neighborhood, and just dominate in a neighborhood. Talking to influencers. So plumbers, real estate agents, home inspectors, home builders, electrical guys that are making holes in ceilings to run new wiring for pot lights. Hey, those holes need to get painted. You know what I mean? Hey, you patch hole, or you make holes, I patch holes and fix them. We should have a conversation, those kind of things. Driving around to renos and seeing bins outside and somebody's fixing their house clearly, stopping by, talking to the contractors, it's the same thing. Hey, you build stuff, I paint stuff, we should get to know each other. It really sounds easy, doesn't it? But, there's a lot going on inside this fucking brain. What I just laid out to you guys for the last 20 minutes are all shit. They're lines that need to get addressed in a in a business. And I'm kind of at a loss for words. I've overwhelmed myself, and I hope that anyone listening to this is going to feel a bit of the pain and the pressure that we feel as business owners. You know, not only that, let's sprinkle in some guilt. You know, if I got some guys that are working for me, and I don't have enough work to keep them busy, and maybe, you know, I'm only using them for 2 weeks out of a month. You know, now it's like their families are going. I'm thinking to myself, oh God, the poor little kids are starving. You know, and it's just like, it's not. They're working for other guys, or they're getting other work, and they know it. You know, going in, but you know, as a business owner, I take it all in. You know, I am the provider of people making their rent payments and stuff like that. So there's a lot going on in our world here, you know, and there's always ways to improve. Look at what I just said. I've been in business 14 years now, and you know, I'm only just starting to get all this financial stuff dialed in and how to do it right. And how did I learn that? I fucked up. You know, I went bankrupt a couple of times. I did this proposal, and wrote off a bunch of stuff. And in order for that shit not to happen again, you better put some shit in place, or just fucking give up and just walk away, go work for someone else. You know, and you know what? It's like, working for somebody else doesn't sound like such a bad idea. You know, however, you know, at the same time, we're being a business owner. Our egos have to be a little bit in check, and I'm pretty good with mine. I know a lot, but I don't know it all. And there's a lot of guys out there who think they know all the answers, and they're just like me. You know, it's like, okay, well, this didn't work. You know, this didn't work. And then again, this whole mindset of, this didn't work. I'm not going to do this again, but everybody's telling me to use Facebook ads. And it's like, I know this won't work, but I'll do it anyway. You know, and then it doesn't work. And it's a negative vibe, and you're putting out the negative energy. You know, it's like that with life. You know, if you consider yourself a loser, you know, or somebody's been telling you that all your life, you're programmed to be that loser, you know? And unless you do some fucking affirmative talk to yourself, or go get some therapy or whatever, it's like, that's the way you're gonna look at yourself as, you know? I'm an alcoholic. I deal with a lot of people coming in to AA who don't have a big opinion of themselves. They consider themselves losers. They think they're failures. You know, that everything they touch just goes to shit, and it usually does, and it's usually the drugs or alcohol that does it. But, you know, you need to rebuild yourself. You need to get some self-respect back, and you do that by following through on what you say you're going to do. You know, you work on your integrity. That's what all the first 3 or 4 steps are all about, is, hey, you want to show up? Then show up. Here's what you need to do in order to be happy, you know? Same with business. Business and recovery are so fucking interconnected for me, because I felt the same way too. I thought I was a loser, and I was a doormat, and I was a people pleaser, and I would do anything that you said to, make you look better in your eyes, you know. And it's just like, what are you doing this for? You know, business is the same way. You know, I was a whore at the start of business. I was price matching. I would ask them, well, what was your lowest price? I'd always beat it. And I was like, you know, who am I comparing against? You know, now it's like, I'd never, ever do that anymore. What's your per square footage cost? It's like, no, I don't have one. I don't have a per square footage cost. I figure out how much time it's going to take me. I do a production rate, and this is what it is, you know. And even that, I've got to look at those numbers again too. And my production rate's a little bit lower than it should be right now. It's $65 an hour per man hour. and it should really be more towards $80. So I need to look at that too. And raising our prices. Yeah, people may not like it, but if I'm confident and know that this service is worth it, then I'll sell it. That's just the fucking way it is. And I've done enough work on myself. I've done enough past jobs to know that I, I can sell it. You know what I mean? It's not selling it. It's just I can accept that's the way it is, and that's the way it is. And it's, hey, I will deliver you a good service. You'll have a great relationship at the end of all of this. I know, because I make people happy all the time, every single job for the most part. There's nobody that's not happy. I haven't had an unhappy client in a long time. And I just do what's required of me to make people happy without, to a degree. I reel people in all the time as well too. I've learned to set people's expectations in reality. It's like, hey, you got a 60-year-old house that's been painted 12 or 15 times, and you want your walls perfect. I said, we could do that, but it's going to cost you. We're going to need to reskim all your walls and make them baby butt smooth, or it's going to be as best as we can do. We'll sand in between coats. We'll do what we can do, but hey, easy. It's a 50-year-old, 60-year-old house. There's going to be some deviations. It's not going to be a perfect, perfect finish, but the color's going to be good. If you get right up close to it with a fucking bright light a foot away from the wall, you're probably going to see some deficiencies. So I've learned that. I've learned to curb people's expectations, and I'm really good at that too, And I've had to talk some people off the ledges, And it's I've had to, I've learned that the hard way by, I don't give stuff away, and it's just like, look, we could do it, anything can be done, but it's going to cost you this much to do it. And most people are just going to go, oh, okay, I just thought I'd ask, And it's like, oh, okay, so it's not that big of a deal, In my brain, I used to think to myself, it'd keep me up at night. I was like, oh God, we're gonna need to do an extra coat on this particular color that this person's picked, and it's gonna be all this extra labor cost on me, and it would keep me up at night. So now it's just like, no. I'm educated enough to know, and that was one of the questions I asked. What color is your house now? What color are you going to? And oh, you're going an off-white. And I'll make a point of mentioning, well, as long as it's not Chantilly lace, we've had some success with off-whites going in 2 coats. Chantilly lace is going to take 4 coats. There's some other ones out there too, high reflective white. That's another color that just has so transparent coverage. Takes a high reflective white. You can paint it like 6 coats and it's still going to show a little pencil mark. It just doesn't have the base because it's a high reflective base, which is very weak and transparent. It's not solid, It's one of these designer colors. The designers love that. Chantilly lace, another one too. It's got a very high LVR rating. And the higher that number, those are all in the 90s. High reflective white, I think, is a 94, and Chantilly lace is like a 94 as well. And I typically a classic gray from Benjamin Moore. I love using that color. It's sitting around 65, and 2 coats, no problem. It'll cover even dark colors, darker colors like a dark brown or something. But when it comes to this high reflective whites, that's something. A Swiss coffee, that's another one that's popular, but it's in the high 80s as well. Coverage, always going to take 3 coats, or a prime and 2 coats. So that's still 3 coats of paint instead of 2, which is like, I always got to let people know that. If I surprise them and say, well, look, we've done 2 coats, it's coming through, and it's like, oh, we need to do a 3rd coat, it's going to be an extra, $1,400. And it's like, nobody wants to hear that. That's where problems come in, That's where it's like, I want to avoid the surprises from jobs. And I've learned enough over the years to, oh, I better mention this. I better mention this about the color, because that's always been an issue where, when money gets increased without people's knowledge, it's like, I'm not paying that. We agreed on this amount of money. Now there's problems. Now it's like, oh, he wanted to overcharge me. Now he's getting bad reviews. The guy's a chiseler. He's raising his bait and switch, sort of thing. I don't want anybody ever saying that to me, about that. And I don't know. So when it comes to the money, there is so much work around what I just talked about. I'm looking at my notes here on the computer behind this camera, and it's amazing some of the things that we have to consider and that we have to do. Like, I'm looking here, and there's 3 full pages, single spaced, of stuff, that needs to get done. Does a financial planner handle this stuff, or an accountant, or a bookkeeper? I don't know. That's something I need to look into and see what it is. I'm thinking that an accountant would know more about how to separate your money and how to handle all this stuff so I don't get dinged at the end of the year when things are, there's no money coming in December, yet I know that I got a tax bill coming up. I know I got HST at the end of December. That's, for the last quarter of the year, from September 30th until December 31st, there's a tax bill. There's an HST bill, And I also know that at the end of December, I figure out what my actual gross income was, and now I got to pay taxes on that too. So, but also I have to live, and it's Christmas time, and I got to buy my family some stuff, and I got a car payment, and I got a fucking mortgage payment, and all this stuff doesn't stop. It sleeps for no one. It does not go on vacation. It doesn't take a break off and during the slow periods. It's there. And it's like, okay, well, how am I gonna manage? So it's all time management, money management, and then in order to get it blows up, it explodes into, okay, you better have enough leads to create that money that you're gonna need. That money you need has to be all these quotes, and you need leads in order. You're only gonna get 60 or 50% of what calls in. You're only going to land 50% of them. So it's all a numbers game, and it's challenging. It is, So I thought I'd throw that out there on a, on a positive note. We're still pretty busy. I've got, but it's starting to dry up now. We're catching up on our production now. So, I've got to do some marketing. I got to hit some neighborhoods. I'll keep you updated on what I plan to do to market. I'm probably going to get some more road signs. I'm going to maybe attack a neighborhood and just go bananas and put a road sign on every incoming road, and signs, and the flyers. People walking their dogs are going to be able to pull a tab. And maybe we'll see what we can generate from that. And I need to track that stuff too. I got to figure out what works. And that's it. It's all tracking and keeping track of everything. Who's paid, what deposits paid, who's owing, chasing money. You got to chase the money that you've done the job that I made the sale to get, so now pay me. So it's like, it's the world of small business, and it can be a lot for one guy. I'm a one-man show, but I'm not. I talk to my guys, but I am a one-man show. I'm like, at the end of the day, maybe an assistant would help, but once I got to get all this nailed down to train an assistant. So here's what I want the assistant to do. That'll take that off my plate, so I don't have to worry about it. Anyway, this is Paul. I'm in the trenches, just like you or anybody that wants to see what a business looks like. This is it. And I shoot from the hip, and I'm a straightforward, no holds barred kind of guy. And but you know what? I love this life that I've created for myself, and I do have some freedom. You know, it's not that bad. Uh, I probably work 30 hours a week now that it's super busy, and you know, I'm off today. It's great. It's you know, I got no complaints for what I've made, but I didn't get into business to work 80 hours a week and to, you know, for next to nothing. So anyway, I've learned that. Have a good week, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you.